Hey, welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. This is Talk Tips number 14. What are some effective ways to practice your public speaking? Check it out. Let's talk about really effective ways to practice public speaking. Most of you listening out there won't do this. I'm talking to the people that will, because this is hard. It's embarrassing. You're going to be pointing out your own flaws, or even worse, getting feedback from other people and exposing your entire persona on stage. Guys, this is why public speaking is the number one fear in the world, is because it's so scary. It's scary to get up there and be a total and complete starfish and be like, okay, point out all my flaws, critique my clothes, critique my mannerisms, critique my vocal inflections, critique my stage geography, critique all of this. Before we get into all of the minutia of what makes really impactful public speaking, first of all, I got to tell you this. Number one is you've got to have a compelling story. Now, I just recorded a podcast episode with Keaton the Muzzle Hoskins, and this is what we talked about. You can't just tell a story because you lived through something. You have to tell a story that you learned a powerful lesson from, and even furthermore, you're able to eloquently communicate that lesson to the people in your audience so that they learn the lesson collapsed into 10 minutes that maybe it took you 10 years to learn. So if you haven't healed from the wounds that are in your story, I got news for you. It is not time to share that from stage. The last thing you want is getting off stage and having people say, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. No, I don't want people pitying you when you get on stage. It is your job to take that microphone and hold that space sacred, because you're using up the most valuable resource that people have to offer, and that is their time. They gave their time to hear you speak, and they're using that time to invest in themselves. They may have even bought plane tickets and bought tickets to come to the event and use that to invest in themselves, and you have a responsibility to honor that. So don't share a story if you haven't healed from it. But also don't take the other direction and just be purely informational either. Anyone can go to a lecture. Anyone can read a textbook. And the reason that those things alone don't transform lives is because there's no heart connection to real life examples, which is why your story is so important. I was on Facebook the other day and I did a poll. And I said, what is the number one reason you have not started your podcast yet? And I got a whole slew of responses. And some people were like, I'm on episode 100. And I was like, yes, rock on. But it shocked me at how many people said, oh, the market's oversaturated already. What? The market's oversaturated? Excuse me, what are you talking about? Think about this. How many movies exist in the last 150 whatever years of filmmaking? Do you know how many movies have been created? Imagine if Warner Brothers Studio or Universal Studio or any of these big studio companies, or even little ones, if you imagine new filmmakers that are like, oh, you know what? Man, there's enough movies out there. Netflix is full. You know, there's enough movies out there. I think the market's too saturated to make another one. BS. I'm calling it out right now. Get rid of that excuse, because I'm telling you right now, the market is not oversaturated. Do you know how many billions and billions of people there are on this planet that need you? Not just someone like you, but they need you and your voice and the way you package the message. They need you. So forget the excuse that the market is oversaturated. So get that out of the way first. Now, let's talk about the technical things that make public speaking so transformational and how to give yourself effective feedback on your public speaking. Now, number one is the story itself. I call this the hero's journey. How you tell the story is important. And you might even realize that telling the story chronologically isn't as important as telling the story in the right sequence. You might put things out of chronological order, just like the best novel you've ever read. So your story is important. The next thing is, what did you learn based on your story? Those are your 3 content pieces based on what the story of your life taught you. Now, converting your story into content is what makes it transformational. Now, the other element that you need to be aware of is exercises. Meaning have the audience do something. There are things like enrolling questions. These are things like state changes. These are things like pattern interrupts, but they should be able to take one single action step before they go to bed, the day they hear your story, that makes their life better because of you. As Dan Clark says, I like me better when I'm with you. I want to see you again. That's what your audience should be saying when they listen to you speak. Now, once you have all of these elements, and by the way, I have a signature presentation blueprint. It outlines all 10 elements of the signature keynote and puts them in order for you. You can have that if you want. I'll put it in the description of this video. But I want you to practice. I want you to practice doing this for 10 minutes. I want you to practice doing this for 15 minutes. I want you to practice doing this for 20 minutes or even 45 minutes, however long your signature presentation is given on a stage. Practice for that amount of time. In the Mastery Hive, we do this and we practice and we give each other critiques and we say, how impactful was this? Did your body language support or distract? Did your tonality support or distract? Did your word choice support or distract? And I'm asking, did it support your vision, your message, and what the audience needs? Or was it a distraction from all of those things? Now, here's what I tell you most people won't do. But if you do, you will be among the most notable and noteworthy speakers in the entire world. I'm talking the likes of Martin Luther King. I'm talking the likes of Abraham Lincoln. I'm talking the likes of King George from the movie The King's Speech. This is what you must do. Record yourself and then rewatch the recording. Rewatch it with the sound off so you can observe your body language. Rewatch it with no picture and just listen to it and listen to your tone. Critique yourself. When people are in the Mastery Hive, and they come in and they practice their signature keynotes, the very first thing I do is have them critique themselves, because generally people know where they're like, that stole from my power or that added to my power. We're smart. We understand this. Also understand this, that no one in this public speaking world ever, not even Tony Robbins, has arrived, meaning he's always going to improve. When he delivers his signature keynote, the next stage will be better than the last. Your 100th stage will be better than your first stage. But listen, you cannot get to your 100th stage unless you do the first stage and the second and the third and the fifth, and you fall on your face a few times. In fact, I was listening to a podcast just recently with Adam Sandler and Joe Rogan. These guys have been on stages for I don't even know how long. We all know their names. And here's something fascinating that Adam Sandler said. He said, I was on a stage at a comedy club. And I was hopping on and I was doing my sketch. And when I got off, I thought to myself, I bombed that. Nobody laughed. It was a complete faceplant. It was a complete failure. And if Adam Sandler, given this track record in his career, is still finding ways to improve, then you probably shouldn't beat yourself up for not being perfect out the gate. The biggest mistake you can make is not starting. So take this challenge. Record yourself for 10 minutes and rewatch it. In fact, I want to know in the comments if you took this challenge and did it. I want to know who my people are, because I need to see you on your next stage. We'll see you in the next Talk Tips.
Marianne Hickman here again. Listen, I hope super helpful for you. Maybe you'll learn something new. Share with me in the comments what was valuable. Or if you have this whole separate question like, hey, I wanted to know about this. I wanted to know about stage fright. I want to know how about my presentation on stage. I want to know about how to dress on stage. Anything that you want to know that's relevant to growing your business through stages, put in the questions, because guess what? I go through and answer all of those personally. That's not an agency or a VA. That's me going through and looking at your questions, because you are who I am here for. So last thing is I want you to get this database. If you haven't gotten it already, now I've got thousands of downloads on this thing, so maybe you've got it, but if not, make sure you go to mariannehickman.com/database. What that's going to do is take you to a page. You're going to input all of your information. We're going to send the database to you. You're going to request access to it. I keep it locked down so I can make sure I get it to just the right people. And you're going to request access. And then once you have that, you're going to go through and apply to podcasts that have the topic that you'd be an expert speaking on. Here's the thing. I get this database updated twice a week. So there's always new stuff in there. And if you're a podcaster, there's even a list of guests that you can have on your show on that podcast. Maybe you end up doing a podcast swap and you grow your audience that way. Regardless, I want you to get it. So mariannehickman.com/database, and we'll see you in the next Talk Tips.